Now Texas baseball coach Jim Schlossnagle is in the middle of a sports, financial, and I think it's fair to say culture war that has triggered Aggies everywhere. And I bring it up again because there's a few tentacles to this that I think are pretty interesting, and then a great story by ESPN about coaches lying. It really is good. Poor guy, this new baseball coach at Texas. He's the piñata in all of this, but he created it by a bad news conference, so that's just the way it is. If he was the football coach leaving Texas A&M for Texas, this story would blow up even more. But he's been a very successful baseball coach throughout his career, really successful. And his completely ill-fated, terribly handled news conference after Texas A&M got beat in the College World Series final, that rant is haunting him now. I think it's going to fade over time. I don't think it's going to completely go away, but I do think it will fade. So that's just the way it is now. He seems to be a fairly smart guy. He blew it in the moment, but he's just going to have to live with this. So I think it's best, even though that's going to fade, it's probably best that he just stop talking. His most recent answer probably is not helping either. It's just best just to shut up. His answer as to why he left A&M. Of course, the history goes, they get beat in the final. Reporter asks about the Texas job. He snaps. He handles it horribly. He did the right thing when he took the Texas job. 24 hours later, less than 24 hours later, he apologized. It's all he could do. And that's all he can do from now until he's successful at Texas. And that's just apologize. But his most recent answer, or maybe even the answer in the last few days, but it just, the story keeps going because it's a culture war. It is. It's not just a coach bailing. It's not just a coach handling a news conference terribly. A&M and Texas are a culture war. And I think he's avoiding saying it. And you see if you agree with me that maybe the guy just needs to say it. It's not going to make it feel any better, but I do think it explains a lot. And I think it'd be a better answer explaining why his family would like Austin more than Caldwell. Might be better than the reason he's given. So what's funny is that if he were to give the honest response, would it be better or would it be worse? A&M's going to be triggered no matter what. Everything about Texas is triggering. Texas coming to the SEC is really triggering. A&M almost winning a championship for the first time since the late 30s, and then the coach bails and lies about it, is really, really triggering. So what if he just said the truth? Instead of saying, I got the impression they didn't want me, which is probably not true. What if he just said, the truth is my family doesn't want to live in Caldwell. We want to be rich in Austin. We want to be like everyone else there. We just want to live large in Austin. That's the truth. That's what we want. So I don't know if that hurts, is more triggering to A&M and hurts even worse, or it might just feel better. Right? I mean, there's people that probably want to live in College Station. There's coaches that probably want to be there. It's a good fit for some people. It's a terrible fit for others. Maybe he's that guy. What if he just said it? What if he just came out and said, this isn't a good fit for me. It's not the way we want to live. Nothing against it. It's just not for us. What if he said that? The Texas gig is better. Any gig at Texas is better than any job because of the amount of money and all that you're given, and for most people, the way of life. Okay? It's more money. It's a better overall job. And most importantly, it's not Caldwell. Being a millionaire, and there are plenty. We know that in Austin. But being wealthy in Austin is nice. Caldwell, maybe not so much. I wish the guy would just say it. Instead, he's still trying to justify bailing on the Aggies. This is a report that just came out in the last 2 days from Yahoo Sports. I'm not trying to stir up his news conference again. He's done that. That one's not going to go anytime soon. But what if he just gave the brutally honest answer? We want to live somewhere else. That one's pretty great when you're rich. I'm going to fit in with every other rich person in downtown Austin. Here it is. Yahoo Sports. Texas baseball coach Jim Schlossnagle says he left A&M after new AD told him it's, quote, okay to move on. Wait, what? I don't know the guy enough to call him a liar. I find that hard to believe. Is that the best response to give? Says new Texas baseball coach Jim Schlossnagle has seen no shortage of critics since leaving A&M for his in-state rival. In an interview with the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, Schlossnagle claimed that Trev Alberts, who became A&M athletic director in March, told him before an NCAA tournament game that it would be, quote, okay to move on. I maybe did. I don't know. I don't know. My question is that the best response to give publicly, or would the response of, you know what, I've had a great run here. When the opportunity to move to Austin and make that kind of money presents itself, it's what my family wants to do. We want to live in Austin. Now, that's code for we want to be rich in Austin, which you have no other way, of course. So he says his boss told him it's okay to move on. The context of the alleged advice was Schlossnagle voicing his frustration. He says, quote, Trev came to me the day before the regional to have a conversation. He asked me if I was frustrated. I told him I had some frustrations about how slow the ballpark process was going, and it was tough to operate without a sport administrator, but I was committed to working through it. He said to me, you know, Jim, if you ever don't feel like this is the place for you, that's okay, and it's okay to move on. There you go. He says, I felt a little taken back by that. And that was the moment that I began to think that this maybe wasn't going to work out. I don't know. I mean, is it that big of a deal? Again, it's baseball. It's not going to be that big of a deal, but it's triggering for Aggies. What if he just, like everyone else said, I'm going to be rich. He wouldn't say that. My family wants to live in Austin. It's what we want. It's what they want. It's a great fit for us. There. What if he just said that? Because I think that's probably true. He's rich, it's a better gig, and his family wants to be in Austin and not Caldwell. Caldwell's not for everybody. It is for some people. What if he just owned it? Would that be a better response than him trying to make the claim, well, I didn't feel like I was that wanted here? I mean, sort of dumping it on the athletic director for what he said, which may be true, maybe not true. I don't know. I'm just wondering how it would have been received, how it will ever be received for the next coach that says, I'm going to Austin because, one, my family wants to live there, and we're going to be ridiculously rich. We're going to be like everyone else in downtown Austin. We're going to be rich, and it's a great place to be rich. Not rich, not so much. He wouldn't say that. I am. So how would that be received? Out of his press conference train wreck, though. Okay, here's the other part. How would that be received if that's just what his answer was? He can't explain away his ridiculous behavior at the news conference, but instead of saying this about the AD, saying, I'm not sure I was really wanted, what if he just said, my family wants to go there, and we're going to make a lot of money? Yeah, we're like everyone else there. Okay, but out of this news conference, this is funny, which is going to haunt him. It will. It's going to haunt him until he wins big at Texas, and even more, it's always going to be triggering for A&M. That's just the way it is. The news conference that he ripped a reporter, and he lied to the reporter. I said, always when a coach is that emphatic, they're lying. Sure enough, he took the Texas job 12 hours later. ESPN had a really funny but truthful story over the weekend of coaches that have done this. And it wasn't just picking him out. He's just the latest example of these examples of coaches pointing the finger at everyone saying, how dare you ask that question? I'm not going anywhere. I love it here. And then, of course, they leave. It's pretty funny. I would say, we could debate the most famous, don't ask me that, I love it here, and then they're gone not long after. It may have been Roy Williams. I don't know. That one always stands out to me because it was live on television. So I'm trying to remember what year that. It's a long time ago now because he was head coach at Kansas. It's an on-court post-game interview. I can't remember if they just won the semifinal or they just won the championship. Reporter asks him about going to North Carolina. He snaps at her live on TV. What a stupid question. What an idiotic thing to ask me. That kind of thing. Of course, everyone knew right away, well, then he must be leaving. That one stands out. ESPN brought up some others in addition to Jim Schlossnagle. Jim Schlossnagle said, I took the job at Texas A&M to never take another job again. Less than 24 hours later, he was gone. He had taken the Texas job. Here's Lincoln Riley. I'm not going to be the next head coach at LSU. There's a catch here. That's sort of true. Less than 24 hours later, he was the head coach at USC. That was 2021. He went from Oklahoma to USC. I think he's in real trouble, by the way. There's a whole other discussion about what a lousy job he's doing for all that he's been given. So ESPN reports Riley was 100% correct when he emphatically shut down any rumors of him taking the LSU job during a Saturday night news conference after, this is when he's coaching in Oklahoma, 37-33 loss to Oklahoma State. I can't believe they only gave up 37 points. Usually his teams give up 57. By Sunday night, he had announced that he would be the head coach at USC. Caleb Williams followed him to Los Angeles. This past year, they went 7-5, which is just comical. You have the number one pick in the draft, you went 7-5, and an ugly 7-5 at that, too. Here's Brian Kelly, who was the head coach at Notre Dame. Unless the fairy godmother comes by with $250 million check. Kelly joked, according to ESPN, that it would take $250 million to lure him away from South Bend. Oh, well, he did. He went to LSU for 10 years and $95 million. His record now is 20-7 in 2 seasons at LSU. I believe that he had 5 consecutive 10-win seasons at Notre Dame, and then he made the joke, only if you give me $250 million am I leaving, and then the next day he left for less than $250. How about your very own Steve Sarkisian? This is bad news for Brandon. This is, we're doing something special here comment, only to turn around and leave. Yes. These are great. I mean, there's a whole list of these lines. They're really good. Well, unless you're a Washington fan like Brandon here, which, of course, this kind of hurts. We're doing something special here, Steve Sarkisian said. This is 2013. I don't even know how old he was, mid-30s maybe. So this is long before Texas, of course. It was his first head coaching job. He's at Washington. And he didn't just say, we're building something special here. He doubled and tripled down on it. Get this. Midway through his 5th season with Washington, rumors started that Sarkisian would be going to USC. He said, instead, quote, we're doing something special here, and he plans to coach at Washington even longer than Don James, who spent 18 years coaching at Washington. Steve Sarkisian left that December for USC. Here's one of my favorites. Here's a coach. You don't know anything about this guy. He's a piece of work. He reminds me of a character, the coach from Beavis and Butthead. He had this crew cut, and he was always angry. He got mad because his assistant coaches left. Now, follow this. His name is Todd Graham. He calls his assistant coaches, quote, nothing but mercenaries. I'm not like that. Okay? Because his coaches were leaving. So he is... He's at Pittsburgh. He goes from Rice after 1 season and did pretty well at Rice, which is saying a lot. So he goes from Rice to Pittsburgh. He's at Pittsburgh, and some of his coaches, of course, well, because it's Pittsburgh, they want to leave. 1 season at Rice, then he takes the head coaching job at Pittsburgh. No, then he goes to Tulsa, then Pittsburgh. 2 days after signing a contract extension with Rice, he then goes to Tulsa, who then goes to Pittsburgh. So he's in Pittsburgh. 3 of Graham's assistants on his staff left for jobs elsewhere in the country. At that time, he called a news conference and blasted them, quote, nothing but coaching mercenaries. 2 weeks later, he was the head coach at Arizona State. Everybody remembers this one. You've got to remember this one. I'm not going to be the Alabama coach, says the Alabama coach. That's Nick Saban. You know where Nick Saban was when he said, I'm not going to be the Alabama coach? I mean, that's not even that weird. I mean, there's Steve Sarkisian saying we're building great things here, coaching mercenaries. I mean, Nick Saban was pretty clear about it. I'm not going to be the Alabama coach. And he became the Alabama coach, and the rest is history. He was at Miami, which proves to you how tough it is to coach in the NFL. He leaves there, blah, blah, blah. Bobby Petrino. Here's one. I want to make it clear I'm not interested in other coaching jobs, which he then the next day left for another coaching job. He was at Louisville, and did he go from Louisville to Arkansas to Atlanta, the coach of the Falcons? Was that the path? I can't remember the path. He says, I'm not interested in other coaching jobs. He then signed a new contract at Louisville. Then he admitted he had been meeting with LSU officials about their coaching job. Then he said again, when asked again, he said, this is where I want to be. I'm not interested in another coaching job. This is his second lie. Then, of course, he then took another coaching job. He took a job in the NFL with the Atlanta Falcons. Is he at Texas Tech now? I'm trying to remember where this guy is. Is he back at Ark? I don't know where he is now. He was at A&M. That guy's a good coach. He's a piece of trash, but he's a very good coach. Then we end up with the famous, the great one, the Albert Einstein of the South, your United States Senator, maybe your next vice president, Thomas Tuberville. Tommy Tuberville is the head coach, I guess, at the time at Ole Miss. He says, quote, at his news conference, they'll have to carry me out of here in a pine box. Oops, says the great senator from the great state of Alabama. Well, he left. Not in a pine box either. I think he's done this a few times now. Maybe that we shouldn't be that shocked that this piece of trash practices insider trading like everybody else in Congress. Perhaps the most famous instance, ESPN reports, of a coach departing after conflicting last words. Tommy Tuberville offered as definitive an assurance to Rebel fans as anyone could imagine. He said the only way he's leaving Oxford is in a pine box when he was dead. Well, days later, he went to Auburn. Yep. He went to Auburn. Not in a pine box. And did he go from Auburn to Tech? To Cincinnati? All this makes perfect sense that you would become a United States Senator, right? What did he go? Ole Miss to Auburn, somewhere near to Tech, to Cincinnati. Each step along the way, he's lying. Then he decides, I'm such a good liar, I think I'll be a United States Senator, and the people of Alabama are thrilled with it.